Aloha and welcome to Thumbing Through Yesterday, the podcast where we take our favorite books down from the shelf, dust them off, and remind ourselves why it is we love them so. My name's Tom Galley, and joining me today we've got Tony Pasculi.
Thanks, Tom.
And today is one of Tony's favorite choices.
This is Appaloosa by Robert B. Parker, and I have to admit that I have cheated again, both on yesterday and on favorite. So it's I've been using this arbitrary cutoff of like before 2000 or maybe just 20 years ago as yesterday, and this dates from 2005. So we're 2 years early with this one, and it's not my favorite Robert B. Parker novel, but it's really hard to pick a favorite Robert B. Parker novel, and this felt like a really good entry point into Robert B. Parker's work. If I had to choose a favorite, I would choose a Spencer novel, but I would probably choose one that's from about 20 books into a 50-book series, and that didn't seem fair to you. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to say, whether this was a favorite or not, I really enjoyed this thoroughly.
I enjoy this a lot too. It's just, I mean, I would still count it among my favorite books, but it's not my peak Parker.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it is a lot of fun. And I believe it's our first Western on the podcast.
I think that you're right.
Yeah.
We have stumbled into new territory here.
Western is not a genre that I read. In fact, I'm trying to think if I've read any other Western at all. Only if you count Elmore Leonard's neo-Westerns.
I don't know. I mean, I know that I was a fan of the Roy Rogers books when I was growing up.
Okay.
So there's that. And I can name Louis L'Amour, who I understand writes Westerns. I don't know that I've ever read one.
He was very popular in our library when I was a kid. Yeah. A lot of kids loved Louis L'Amour. I've never even read Lonesome Dove, which is like the one Western that everyone has read. So, yeah.
I've certainly watched a few of them, and I can enjoy a good Western, especially the more current interpretations of the Western genre.
On film, it's a whole different animal. You've got Unforgiven, you've got The Quick and the Dead, 3:10 to Yuma.
Yeah.
There's a ton of good Westerns, but
this, I really enjoyed this.
All right, so let's have you go first. Why did you enjoy this book?
Well, in part, the heroes are just so conservative, not even conservative, that's not the word I'm looking for. They don't say much, and Virgil in particular, he in the entire novel, he might have 500 words of dialogue. But he's one of those characters that makes the words count. He doesn't say anything that doesn't need to be said. And unlike an int, rather than taking a long time saying it, he tries to make it as concise as he can. And he's just fun. And one of the things I really liked about it is, even though he's got this parsimony, that's what I was looking for, this parsimony with the spoken language, he's trying to improve his command of it. So he's trying new words constantly.
Yes.
And Cole was always improving himself, reading books, making lists of words, which he usually misused slightly. And that was just fun to be reading along and hear him say something that you knew was not quite right, and you knew what he probably meant, but nobody acknowledges it and just keeps moving forward.
It's an interesting character. He's the classic man of action, the strong, silent type, who isn't normally drawn to books, and yet he makes a conscious effort to read books. You'll find that he quotes Clausewitz throughout the series. If you really want to read more, favorite author of his partner,
Everett
HItch. Is much more well-read. He went to West Point. He's got a great grasp of language and vocabulary, but he's kind of the Watson to Virgil's very taciturn Sherlock. Yeah.
Yep, and it's fun. I mean, so you've got in the sidekick role there, or arguably he could be the protagonist. I'm not sure how you'd slice it up, but Everett is a much more well-rounded man than Virgil Cole is. And like I said, he started out, he went to West Point. He did some time soldiering. He didn't like soldiering, so he's done a number of things in the meantime before he finally landed on law manning. And I love the way that they turn these into verbs, right? But without him as an interface, I mean, Cole's kind of a bastard. And for the most part, he walks a tight line. He's set himself boundaries. He's good at killing people. He knows he's good at killing people, so he has chosen to be a lawman so that he has a framework in which to kill people.
Yes.
And if he weren't a lawman, we're left to wonder, but he himself seems not to think that's a good idea.
He would be a criminal, because that's his only skill set.
But we see early on in the book, Annie is teasing him in the saloon, and she steps over the line, and then what does Cole do? He goes and he just beats up the closest guy he can get. And that is not the act of a well-balanced person.
It's not. Now, what's really interesting about this book to me is in the context of Parker's larger body of work. You see these themes emerging. Parker's written 4 series. He's written the Spencer series, which he's most well known for. That's a detective who's been put tragically on film a couple of times. There was a really terrible TV show in the 80s, I want to say, where Robert Urich was Spencer.
I vaguely remember this.
Spencer for Hire. Spencer's this very large PI from Boston, and they made him a skinny, scrawny dude from Las Vegas. It's like, what did you even keep besides the name?
Yeah, they did it with the Michael Keaton Batman. I mean, Batman is a Bruce Wayne rather is a monster of a man. He's tall, he's muscular. He's an Olympian god. And they cast Michael Keaton. Yeah, I'm Batman.
Most recently, they did a Spencer movie with Mark Wahlberg. So they got the Boston part, but then they missed out on everything else. So there's the Spencer series. There's this Cole and HItch series, the Westerns. And then there's another, there's a Jesse Stone series where he's a private cop. And there's a Sonny Randall series where you have a female private detective. And sort of the common element of all of these is what it means. Always the lead character is sort of wrestling with what it is to be a man. What's your code? You have to have a code to live by. And the relationship with women and how women affect those men and their adherence to their code. And I would say a significant difference between Cole here and the Spencer series is that Spencer is very, very lucky to end up with a good woman who reinforces his best traits. And Cole here finds himself with a bad woman who undermines him and goes nearly so far as turning him into a monster, and his buddy saves him at the end. Mm-hmm.
And that, I've got 2 trains of thought here. Let's go with Annie first. Sure. What a despicable character. And why? Okay, now we're given a couple of treatises on Cole. The fact that a man who can do what Virgil Cole does is the kind of man that it comes with a cost, right? Yes. Like beating the guy senseless is part of that cost. But he recognized that Annie was not a good woman, and yet he has still chosen to hitch his, to pledge his loyalty to her. And he's given ample demonstration, repeatedly of what her true character really is.
I think Parker makes it clear that he doesn't really have a choice. I mean, obviously he has a choice. He's a man with free will, but he's just so taken with her in a way that he never has been with any other woman. He resigns himself to the fact that he is powerless in this regard.
Right.
And it's his undoing.
And he watches the end coming. He's totally aware that the end is coming. He's totally aware that she is, is what's tied him to his doom. And he's just willing to go along with it, and thankfully we've got Everett who's willing to sacrifice his entire relationship with Cole in order to prevent that end from arriving.
Yes. To me, again, this feels like, because I don't know much about Robert B. Parker's personal life, but I do know he was married to a long time for the same woman. And that relationship seems to parallel the relationship of Spencer with his longtime girlfriend in the Spencer series. And this, to me, feels like an exploration of what if I hadn't gotten lucky? What if I'd ended up with the wrong woman? What would have happened to me, Robert B. Parker? Bad thing, because Robert B. Parker is also a very, very big guy. And I assume with some physical tendencies and some self-doubt. And So, but you said Annie was a bad character, and I just want to clarify what you mean there.
She's a bad person.
She's a
fascinating character. She's a bad person, a reprehensible person.
Yes.
So, and I don't, again.
To be fair to Annie, I think this is not an environment which was particularly good for women. There were not a lot of options for women once you got away from civilization on the East Coast, you're out here in these small towns in the West, it's just assumed that if you're not married to a farmer, you're a whore. That's it. Those are your two professions that you have a choice of. There's no, single professional woman. That's just not an option. And Annie does seem to sort of make a path for herself in that regard. She becomes a piano player of sorts.
I love the repeated descriptions of her piano playing. She played loud. She wasn't good, but she was loud.
Yes.
I love him describing, so she stopped playing one song and started playing the next, which sounded pretty much like the last one did.
One of the things I love about Parker's writing is he's got this really, really dry wit. You'd never call it so much as a joke ever, but it's just like these very, very cynical observations. Yeah.
I found it very humorous. And again, like you said, it's not a comedy in any stretch of the imagination, but the views that these people have on life and the way that they choose to express them are hilarious on occasion.
Yeah, that's consistent throughout his work.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines from his other series is two guys will be sitting after getting involved in some shenanigans or physical hijinks or nearly dying, and they'll sit down and have a drink at the bar, and one will say, "Should we have another?" And they will say, "We'd be fools not to." Such a great response to that.
I got to remember that one.
Yeah.
Now, Bragg, this guy, we have to have a villain, right?
You gotta have a villain. He's a straight up, he's pretty villainy villain, though.
Yeah, he's a pretty villainy villain. And he goes through, he tries to heavy hand his way through the town. We don't know why, because he's a villain, right? That's all the motivation he needs. He fails. And then he comes back and he does the repentance path.
Yeah.
But what gets me, he's winning, right? He's buying the town out. We don't know who's giving him money or why they would give a character like him money, but he's got money coming in. He's buying the town out. He's going to put Virgil out of work. And he's making a play for Annie. Not that he needs to make a play for Annie. Annie goes to power, whatever power's in the room at the moment. She has absolutely no long-term vision here.
Yeah.
Bragg has been run out of town by Cole, damn near killed by Cole. He's come back into town to wag his nose, to thumb his nose at Cole. And yet he's doing the one thing
that's going to get him killed.
Will get him killed.
Yeah.
Cole will kill him. And he knows this about Cole.
That's a fun thing about this book is there's this sense of fate and destiny to all these characters, even though they all have free will, that they are powerless to resist and it's because of their drives, who they are. Their drives are so strong and they cannot circumvent them with rational thought.
Yeah.
So Bragg has to be top dog. He's been beaten by Cole. He has to win. He has to win, even if he knows it'll kill him. And he holds out that sliver of hope that maybe he will come out on top and Cole will die, but that seems pretty improbable.
Yes, yes, it does. And again, Everett steps in and saves Cole, right?
Yeah.
Because if Cole allows himself to do this, what has to be done, if Cole allows himself to kill Bragg, we feel like that, he's broken his code.
Yes.
And then he himself feels like that's a bad thing, that there will be no accounting for him after that.
Whereas Hitch is a little bit more flexible, morally flexible and a little bit more intellectual, and he can reason his way through these sort of moral minefields.
Well, he even talks about he got into lawmanning because it made the killing easier.
Yeah,
right. It wasn't that he had a problem killing people not being a lawman. There were just consequences that being a lawman largely got rid of.
Yeah. So, and this is one of my few notes I took on this book. That character carries an 8-gauge shotgun.
Yes.
Which is insane. So for those who don't know, I had to look this up before we started. You measure the gauge of a shotgun by how many balls it takes to make 1 pound. So in an 8-gauge shotgun, the balls that come out weigh 1/8 of a frickin' pound.
Well, a ball that would fit down the barrel perfectly would weigh 1/8 of a pound.
Yeah.
That is insanely large.
That is large. That's what do you need a weapon like that when all you're shooting at is human beings?
In the early days of the iron industry, they actually had 4-gauge shotguns that they used for blasting the slag off of the inside of the crucibles. Huh. And this was more or less an artillery piece that was wheeled around. The idea of firing, actually, before this book, I have never heard of an 8-gauge shotgun. I'm going to take him at his word that it does exist.
It does exist.
I know that 10 gauges are popular amongst goose hunters. I've shot 12 gauges and 20 gauges many times.
10 gauge seems like overkill for goose, but okay.
Yeah, and this is back in the day, in pre-smokeless powder and black powder days. A lot of these things, bigger was better, right?
Sure.
The old buffalo rifles, the idea of shooting that size of a cartridge these days is a little bit absurd. You don't need it to get the power, but yeah.
I fired a 12 gauge. I was doing a sporting clays course in Lanai, and I was offered the choice of a 12 or a 14 gauge. And they recommended a 14 gauge for my friend who was with me, who was a woman. And I'm like, well, then I have to take the 12 gauge because I'm a man. And I regretted it because we fired 36 shots going around this course, and my shoulder was sore for days. Yeah, I can't imagine firing an 8 gauge even one time.
Much less, holding it off the hip.
Yeah.
I tell you, though, if I was on the wrong end of an 8 gauge, it would get my attention.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. So, First Western, any other thoughts on this?
There were just so many fun things about it. I love the fact that they have conversations that consist of 30 or 40 words, and yet they convey reams of information.
Yeah.
A couple of these are about Annie. I love the clarity of the moral code, as primitive as it is. The incident with the Indians, right? When Everett saves them by letting the young brave come in and count coup on him. That was just a magnificent scene.
That was great. A lot of tension there. Well resolved. Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. It's a fun book. It's a very, I don't know what the word is. It feels a little bit more, I haven't read any other Westerns, so I can't compare it. I would only be comparing it to films, and that's not fair. There is a film version of this, which is a little bit disappointing, I have to say. Ed Harris made it.
Not a bad choice, but
no, an excellent choice. And I think he actually directed it with him in the lead. And it was just a little bit disappointing as a film.
I think this is one of those that the inner monologue is so important in helping to shape the mood and the narrative. Yeah. And when you lose that inner monologue and you're relying on facial expressions and terse replies, something would have to get lost.
Either that, or you're going to have just incredible actors and incredible filmmaker to fill those silences, because it is pretty terse. Yeah.
The Kindle version had several chapters of the second book, which I, of course, burned through. And then the local library has the first 4 books in a single volume, which I just checked out a couple of days ago.
There you
so
go.
I'm looking
Go to
forward
town.
to at least going that far with it.
They are a fun read. I think we were talking about this right before we started. I think Parker only managed to finish the first 4 before he died.
I was under the impression, it seems like I looked it up on Wikipedia, it said there were 11 books in the series. I was like, or on Amazon, there were 11 books in the series.
What Parker's estate has done is they've recruited 4 or 5 different authors to pick up his various series and continue them after his death. So there's several more written by at least 1 or 2 other authors. There's also more there's also more Spencer novels coming out. There's more Sonny Randall novels, there's more Jesse Stone novels, but all written by like Ace Atkins and folks like that. Yeah.
I have yet to find a series that's been continued by another author, including the son of the original author, that I felt lived up to the series.
Well, read the first 4. I think you'll enjoy them. Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on this one?
I think that's all I got. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What did I pick for next time? Dragon's Egg.
Dragon's Egg.
Going back to late high school, early college with that one.
Looking forward to that one.
All right. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.